Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of 1 Minute Breakdowns, where we break down each and every fight on the upcoming UFC card or whichever event I'm doing in a minute or less, or at least we try to do so, usually around a minute to a minute and a half. But you get the point. Going over last week's results, we had five moneyline bets for the card. And starting off, we had Daniel Zellhuber, who definitely covered his price tag. Looked like a minus 300 in there for all I care. And then we had Jillian Robertson, Rafa Garcia, Ion Kotilaba, and Dustin Jacoby had to ruin the sweep for us. But nonetheless, we ended the card plus 3.5 units. Another green day in the books. Continuing our win streak, putting our win streak to, let's see, let's count 5 cards in a row. So looking to make it 6 in a row on the profit streak, and looking to make you guys some money. If you guys haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the video out a lot, helps me out a lot. We're almost at 300 subscribers. But before I get into the fights, I have to shout out the chat. Shout out to my boy Gordo, Play in Fade Sports. If you guys don't follow him or subscribe to his YouTube already, the man releases the top-notch DraftKings content in the game and top-notch breakdowns. One of my closest homies here in the MMA Twitter space, so you have to give this guy a follow. And then we have our boy Evan. Evan is also one of the nicest people in the community. You have to give him a follow. Really fun to talk to him in the DMs, and has a great sports mind and just a great heart in general. Shout out to my guy Anthony. I appreciate you. And without further ado, let's pull up these fights. Let's speak these fights. And this is what the people are waiting for. Let's go ahead and do this. Starting with the first fight of the night, we have Brady Heisen going up against Dana Badgari. Brady Heisen is making his second appearance as a UFC fighter. In his first win, he got dropped really bad in the first fight that he had in the UFC against Fernie Garcia. We know that there's that chin liability there. Brady is a wrestler by heart. He's the type that chain wrestles. He trains with Merab Dvalishvili. He has that insane cardio and can definitely go 3 rounds in the wrestling. But when it comes to the striking, this guy leaves a lot of openings to be countered. And going up against Dana, that spells trouble. If Brady is able to land the takedowns consistently, he wins this fight. But if it plays on the feet, I worry for Brady. We've seen him drop multiple times, as I mentioned. And Dana just hits like a truck. Dana has been running through a lot of guys that have this poor striking defense for a while now. And with him being at fight ready for this camp over the past 8 months, I think his takedown defense game, which already is pretty decent at 66%, is likely going to improve, knowing that the game plan for Brady is to wrestle him for 3 rounds. It's a classic striker versus grappler matchup where rarely I lean towards the more experienced, high volume, and heavy-handed striker. Dana has 3 first-round KOs here. What worries me is that he's lost all of his fights that went past the first round in the UFC. I'm still going to be taking Dana, probably going to take him round 1 KO. Next fight, we have Priscilla Caceres going up against Karine Silva. Priscilla Cachoeira, we've known her to be a volume striker with poor striking defense. With all due respect, she does not really hold her own when it comes to the defensive side of the striking, and her ground game is lacking. Karine Silva has some real power on the feet. Her sub game is really good, and I think if she takes Cachoeira down once, she can finish the fight. I think it's that plain and simple. Cachoeira is decent on the feet, as I mentioned, but her striking defense is always a worry, and Karine does carry that power, as I mentioned. Karine is also 5 years younger. She has a 2-inch reach advantage in this matchup and has a 100% finish rate. To be honest, this is what surprised me the most. Word jumble there. What surprised me the most is that Karine Silva has 3 more professional fights than Priscilla Cachoeira. That was an eye-opener. I did not know that. I'm going to be taking Karine Silva in this matchup. Under 2.5 is going to be a good look. I think she gets it done inside the distance, probably by submission. So those are all good looks. Karine Silva sub round 1 plus 575. You know what to do with that. Let's see the chat before we go on to this next fight. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Evan is the G. Oilers and Wizard. You already know. Come on. Go Oilers. Go Oilers. Next fight up, we have Francis Marshall going up against William Gomi. Gomi's going to have a 3-inch height advantage in this matchup. With Gomi, he looks to grapple more than he likes to strike his opponents, while Marshall has some very crisp boxing himself. I think he has the ability to mix it up as well, and I think he's the better wrestler in this matchup. Marshall appears to hit harder as well. In my opinion, he has the more complete MMA game. And compared to Gomi, where his striking is a big question mark for me, and that last fight against Jarno Aarons didn't really impress me at all. And it was a really close fight against someone who I feel is more of like a regional fighter, not UFC level talent, with all due respect. I think Marshall moneyline is a parlay piece. If you got him at the early numbers around the minus 170, you definitely did your job. I really like Marshall, even at this minus 200 price tag. Next up, we have Mohammed Usman going up against Junior Tafa. Junior Tafa is making his UFC debut here. Mohammed Usman has a path to victory here. It's very clear, and it's the wrestling. He's shown in the past on some of his regional fights that he's able to wrestle consistently for 15 minutes. Whereas striking is not the best. That's what worries me. And his defensive striking is, that's a big question mark. Tafa's MMA career only started 8 months ago. Let's just say how it is. He's still very green. I don't think Tafa carries power in his hands as the fight goes on. His gas tank is a little bit of a worry because we really haven't seen him go past that 6-7 minute mark. I think if Usman wants to win this fight with the least path of resistance, it would be through the wrestling. And we haven't seen much of Tafa's ground game. It's mainly just first round knockout highlight reels. So if Tafa can keep this fight on the feet, I think he'll likely cruise. But if he gets taken down, it's going to be a long night for him. And I think Usman will be able to zap his cardio early. I'm going to be passing. I am very tempted to take just a unit shot on Mohammed Usman here, but I have not decided. Next up, we have Carol Rosa going up against Norma Dumont. Carol Rosa is moving up a weight class here to featherweight. Rosa is definitely going to be the better striker in this matchup, and she can get takedowns as well. But she also can get taken down, and what I fear is that Dumont being a very big heavyweight. Oh man, imagine a Dumont heavyweight. Wow. Dumont being the bigger featherweight, I think this is going to benefit her against a fighter who's not used to the weight class. But I just think Carol Rosa is a little bit ahead of her in terms of skill for skill. I think Norma can land the takedowns and win minutes on the mat here, but I do think when it's on the feet, Rosa's going to be able to piece her up and keep her distance and manage her distance as well as I think she could. I'm going to definitely pass on this one, but I lean Rosa. And then before we get into this next one, I'm going to be checking the chat because this next fight is very easy to break down. Let's see. Yeah, she's definitely going to be catching a beating this weekend. But minus 190 on Karini Silva. I would rather just take the round one because her cardio is pretty questionable. I'm riding with Marshall as well, like his physicality over Gomi. Yeah, definitely. His physicality definitely translates into UFC, and his striking, I think, is what sets this matchup apart completely. Volume versus physicality from this one. Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about the Rosa fight, Gordo. Yeah, definitely a volume versus physicality, where I think the volume does win. Dumont bumping up a weight class, getting people excited for multiple. Hey, we all know what her best asset is. All right, for this next matchup, we have Ronnie Yaya going up against Montel Jackson. Montel is going to have an 8-year age advantage, 4-inch height advantage, and an 8-inch reach advantage. We all know Ronnie Yaya to be one of the fighters that's been knocked down the most in the UFC. I believe he's about to set the record. Jackson is the biggest favorite on the card, and I think it's for a good reason. I mean, this should be very easy for Jackson as long as he doesn't go to the ground with Yaya, who's a 5-degree black belt, a 5th-degree black belt, which has saved him a lot in the past. I think Montel Jackson is just going to land the early KO here, probably in round one, and it'll be a quick night for him. I don't really see a possible way for Ronnie Yaya to win this fight unless Montel Jackson's fight IQ has gone down the dumps and he follows him to the mat after he knocks him down. But yeah, pretty simple breakdown, straightforward for me. I don't really think anything else can happen in this matchup. Next up, Ricky Glenn going up against Christos Yagos. The tail of the tape is similar, similar in size, reach, and height. Yagos has lost to the better strength of schedule, but has beaten some of the worst guys in the UFC. Ricky Glenn is beating better guys than Yagos and is losing to really good competition as well. On the feet, I think Glenn is going to have more power, but the wrestling is going to be more in the pocket of Yagos, and his submission game is pretty decent. It's a very close fight, and I don't know if I can pick a side. I'm leaning towards the Ricky Glenn side, but I'm definitely not be. I will not be betting this fight. Sorry, guys, I'm stumbling over words here. I just had my first meal and first sip of water, so forgive me. It is 8:30. Next up is one of my favorite fights on the card. Jeremiah Wells going up against Matt Semmelsberger. And I remember when Couch Warrior and I went against almost all of MMA Twitter when we picked Matthew Semmelsberger against Jake Matthews. That was glorious. I remember I was on a flight to Vegas. I landed and I was watching the fight straight out of the airplane. And I was just jumping with joy. I'm like, plus 350. Oh, that was nice. That was so nice. Uh, Semi was going to be 4 inches taller than Wells. Both guys are quite durable, in my opinion. I think Semi's the better technical striker versus Wells will be the more powerful striker in the hands. I think he can shut anyone's light out. I mean, everyone counted him out against Court McGee to get that knockout, and look what he did. He flatlined him in the first round. This guy carries real power. I think Wells can find success in the takedown department as well here. We saw Semi being held down on the mat before, like especially against AJ Fletcher in that first round. That was a really bad look. Both guys are dangerous. And to be honest, I think this is probably fight of the night. And I do lean towards the Wells side here ever so slightly, but no bet as of now. I'm really tempted on the Jeremiah Wells side. Wells finish only is a very good look. I think he can sub Semmelsberger, and I think he can knock him out. I'm not sure what the line is. I remember last checking, was it like minus 150? I'm pretty sure. Wells is a monster. I like the fact that Wells has, yeah, he's been in the wrestling room with a lot of good people like Sabatini, Brady. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be biased to like Jeremiah Wells either. He's a really talented guy, and a lot of people look at the age at 36 and they're like, this guy's really old, but he hasn't really carried any damage. He hasn't been in these wars, so he's pretty fresh as a UFC fighter. But moving on, we have Yasmin Lucindo going up against Brogan Walker. Lucindo's dangerous on the mat, dangerous ground and pound. She's vicious when it comes to the ground and pound, and has some really good technical boxing. I mean, a lot of people counted her out when she went up against Yasmin Jauregui, and damn, did she show out in that fight? Even in a loss, she looked really good as a big underdog too. I think she was around plus 280 in that matchup. The wrestling game is going to be the key, in my opinion, for Lucindo. I think she'll win minutes everywhere, to be honest. Brogan really hasn't shown the ability to get up off the mat when Juliana Miller took her down, and we all saw what happened to Juliana Miller when she fought the 3-year layoff Veronica Hardy. Yeah, Veronica Hardy could have made improvements in those 3 years, but come on now. That was just an absolute beating from a minus 400 favorite going down like that. Yeah. Brogan Walker is not going to be able to get up off the mat. And Lucindo, I think she can finish the fight with that ground and pound that I was mentioning. I do like Lucindo as a parlay piece this week. I probably will be betting it myself as long as the line doesn't get too carried away. This is hilarious. Brogan gonna need a walker. Anthony, that was slick. I love it. I was asking myself the same question when taping this. Like, when do we see two 0-1 WMA fighters on the main card? And I think the answer is never. Like, we haven't ever seen a 0-1 and 0-1 fighter going up against each other on a main card. So, I mean, there's first times for everything. Yeah, I do think Yasmin is a really talented up and coming prospect. She just went up against another up and coming prospect who is just a little bit more talented than her. But next up, we have Bobby Green going up against Jared Gordon. Stylistically, I think this is a much tougher fight for Gordon than his last time out. Bobby Green is a very slick striker, throws a lot, throws a bunch of volume. Both these fighters tend to go to decision for the most part. With the state of MMA judging at the moment, I can't go anywhere near Bobby Green's money line. Gordon has been finished a couple of times, but I don't think Bobby Green's going to be the one to finish him. If anything, it'll be like an attritional finish, but I highly doubt it. I lean Bobby Green, but no bet, to be honest. I think value side for money line is going to be Gordon. Lou brought this bet up to me. It's Gordon by split decision. Can't argue with that. I cannot. But I did play Bobby Green's significant strikes over 78.5 on Prize Picks, so I'm keeping an eye out for that. Bobby Green mentioned so this is something like his retirement fight, but then I got clarification that it was his retirement fight as Bobby Green, and now he'll be referred to as King. So, yeah, I can't look into that anymore. Next up, we have Brad Tavares going up against Bruno Silva. And Brad Tavares is someone who I met at the PFL 3 event this past weekend. And he looked pretty decent shape. He looked like he's preparing pretty well and it's going according to plan. Brad Tavares, obviously, we saw him in that last matchup against Dricus du Plessis. His striking defense is quite horrible. I thought it was a little bit better before that fight, but going up against a gassed DDP, man, he landed a lot on him. And I think he could have put du Plessis out multiple times in that fight, just given how gassed he gets. The one thing that I did note was that Tavares' durability is slowly going down because he did get rocked a couple of times in that fight. And that's not a good thing to see when you're going up against a really heavy hitter in Bruno Silva. I understand Bruno Silva shat the bed in that last outing against GM3. He looked really out of shape. There was definitely something going on with him. And, I can't lean anywhere except for the underdog here in Bruno Silva. I think he's the much more powerful striker. And if Tavares does not defend the striking as well as he did in past times before the du Plessis fight, I think he's going to be in some trouble. I do think Bruno Silva can touch the chin and hurt him really bad. And at plus 150, I think I'm willing to find out. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I do really like Bruno Silva in this spot. Yeah, I'm going to be picking Bruno Silva to win by decision in this matchup. I mean, even the knockouts plus 205, which a lot of people say is his money line, but yeah. And this is definitely the funniest thing. Silva survives against Pereira, but gets finished by GM3. Like, how does that even happen? The hardest hitting fighter, arguably, I'm not going to say in the history of the sport because he hasn't had that many fights in the UFC yet or in MMA in general. But yeah, one of the hardest hitting punchers. That is nuts. Next up, also, by the way, for those that didn't know, Yadong Song versus Ricky Simon is postponed. So next week, it's going to be a 5-round fight for a main event. So they took that off of this card. So we're already at the main event. Sergey Pavlovich going up against Curtis Blaydes. This is going to be one hell of a fight. We have on one hand Sergey Pavlovich, who has won his past 5 fights by the way of first-round knockout. We all know he has that death touch, really slick striking, but we haven't really seen him out of that first 6 minutes at all. And I worry that he'll gas out. I worry that his wrestling game is horrible because we really haven't seen anything in terms of wrestling defense. And when you look at someone Curtis Blaydes, he goes for the wrestling relentlessly. My one worry for Curtis Blaydes, though, is that he's slowly falling in love with his striking more and more as we go on with his career. He got that knockout win last time out against Chris Daukaus. And I do think Blaydes is going to be able to take Pavlovich down and end this early. I think he's going to be able to finish him in the first round. We've seen Pavlovich go down in the first round against Alistair Overeem when he made his UFC debut. I know it's been a long time since then, but I think the wrestling is going to zap the cardio of Pavlovich. And Blaydes, I mean, it's his nickname, Razor Blaydes, with the elbows. He has that tattoo of a razor blade on his elbow for a reason. It's just nasty ground and pound. So I do think the under 1.5 hits in this fight I like the Curtis Blaydes side. So if you want to parlay up Curtis Blaydes and under 1.5, I fully support it. Or if simply take Curtis Blaydes round 1 plus 325, Curtis Blaydes round 2 plus 450, and thank yourself. You don't need anything else. It's only a unit spent, and you can get exactly either a unit in profit for the first round, a unit and like some change, or if you take the round 2 only, it's going to be a unit and 55, if I'm doing my math correctly. So, oh no, sorry, a unit and 75. So either way, you're going to be making money. That's after the deduction for the lost bet on the round 1 or round 2 if you take both. So that's exactly how I'm going to play it. I do like the Blade side. I do think he's the better fighter. And when you have the wrestling credentials like he does, it's a path to victory that I cannot deny. So give me Curtis Blaydes. But yeah, guys, that is the end of these breakdowns. And yes, I luckily I went on Lou's show today. Props to consider and maybe bet. So check that out tomorrow morning when it gets released. We recorded it today, and I had to prep a bunch of props for it. And those two were my favorite props. Those two, along with the Carini Silva round 1 sub at plus 575. So if those hit, don't say I didn't tell you, because I'm telling you. But yeah, that is it. Thank you for watching. Thanks for the support. Thank you for being active in the chat. I really appreciate you all. And you guys are what drive me to do this every single week. And I have a lot of fun doing it with you. So if you have any other questions, feel free to DM me on Twitter. Shoot me a message. I'm always available and I'll always answer. But until next week, I will see y'all later.